Okay, time to talk about Sora. Sora Takenouchi. She is the DigiDestined with the crest of love. Her Digimon partner is Biyomon. Unfortunately, out of the piggy banks that they had, I have several of them. Unfortunately, Yokomon is not one of them. Yeah, Yokomon is the baby form of Biyomon. Unfortunately, I do not have that one. Um, but because Sora is a DigiDestined of Love, I have a Sylveon because they evolve via affection, which is love, and then I have a Torchic because Biyomon very much has fire as her element, and Torchic, Firebird, yeah. I would have like a Talonflame or that line, but I don't have one. And Sora's mother is a flower designer, and Sora becomes a flower arranger, so that's why I have the flowers. So, Sora Takenouchi, she is, as I said, the DigiDestined with the crest of love. We will be going through her timeline, and then we of course have her Digimon, who the baby form in training form is Yokomon, which goes into Biyomon, which goes into Birdramon, which goes into Garudamon, which goes into, in Digimon Tri, we see her turn into Phoenixmon for the first time. And then, of course, as I've mentioned with the Tai and Matt videos, in the final battle in Digimon Tri, Digimon Adventure Tri, they all digivolve together into Omnimon. The original 8 Digimon digivolve together. So we're going to start with Sora's timeline. So Sora's timeline starts in 1995. She is a classmate of Tai's. We learn this because at some point Tai is like calling someone, or Sora calls Tai, I don't remember exactly which, but Sora calls Tai or Tai calls Sora when they're little kids. And she's like, and actually she mentions Mimi in the thing, so I don't know if that was just like continuity error or what, but she's like, Tai, Mimi told me you were the one who threw up in my hat. And like, just like them not happy with, Sora not happy with Tai, which is just kind of a long running gag for the two of them. She, of course, witnesses the battle between Parrotmon and Big Agumon / Red Greymon, when he's protecting Kari and Tai. And, she witnesses that battle. She sees them disappear. And she is one of course, the original 8 Digidestined, or the Digidestined out of that group that is chosen. Because we see in the flashback type episode, we see her get scanned by the... we kind of, the thing gets a name later. I'll go over that more in Kari's video. But the being that chose them, or one of the beings that chose them to become Digidestined, is called homeostasis. That's kind of a bit more something that will be gone over in A, Kari's video, and then B, homeostasis might get its own video depending on stuff. I haven't quite decided on that. And then of course we move into, several years later, they're all at the summer camp. Sora and the other 6 are, of course, at the summer camp, and they get whooshed off to the digital world when it starts snowing and there's weird weather all over the world. She meets Yokomon, and then, of course, they have to battle Kawagumon, and, they all digivolve, and Yokomon digivolves into Biyomon for the first time. And then, of course, they escape Kawagumon, and they end up traveling. Agumon digivolves, Gabumon digivolves, and then they end up in this kind of desert area, and then they end up at this village that's called Yokomon Village, where it's all inhabited by all these other Yokomon, and they know Sora's Yokomon, Sora's Biyomon. She's like, well, I digivolved because of Sora's love. And yeah, yeah, that's basically the explanation we get for why the Digimon that the Digidestined have the ability to digivolve. They digivolve to protect their partners. And while they are at this village, the village unfortunately ends up being attacked by a Digimon called Maramon. Now, according to the Yokomon, Maramon is usually a very peaceful Digimon that helps keep the water in their village pure so they can drink it and so they can use it for their crops and everything. Side note, the Yokomon gave them a lot of food, but it was all like bird seed. Which was kind of funny. And they're all just like, how are we supposed to eat this? And, they all, the Digimon, I don't think have a problem with it, but I think that all the humans are like, guess we might as well try it. I don't remember what happens. But Sora ends up Maramon attacks the village because he is actually being controlled by a black gear, one of the Digimon that's kind of being messed with by Devimon. He attacks the village, and Biyomon is able to digivolve into Birdramon. She is then able to kind of fight fire with fire, and then destroy the black gear that is controlling Maramon. He then returns to being a peaceful Digimon, and later on he ends up becoming one of their friends. Then of course they travel throughout File Island, and then of course they are all separated by Devimon. And Sora and Joe actually end up at the Yokomon Village. And they end up getting captured by the Bakumon, and they're going to be used as kind of a sacrifice to their, Lord Bakumon, who Bakumon are actually a ghost type of Digimon. They look like a ghost. They're not the smartest things in the world because Gomamon and Biyomon outsmart one of them into giving him food, or into giving them food so they can then digivolve to protect their trainers, to protect their DigiDestined, of course, which is just funny when that happens. And they, Sora and Joe are about to be sacrificed, and then they escape, and then they actually end up having to come up with a chant that they use to make the Bakumon kind of weaken. And it's basically just a chant. It's like, the mind over matter type of thing. And it's, they chant, Bakumon lose your power, Bakumon lose your power, and it works. And, Biyomon and, Gomamon show up, and they digivolve, and they save them. And then, of course, they deal with Devimon. And, of course, Sora is, witness to what happens with Angemon and Devimon, and, Angemon sacrificing himself to protect TK, of course. And then they meet the hologram of Genai, and then they get sent off to Continent of Server, where they end up all finding their crests. Sora's crest, as I mentioned, is the crest of love. And, they end up there, and, they're all going around, and there's different battles and everything. And in, of course, one of the battles with Edamon, that's when Tai, unfortunately, digivolves Greymon, the corrupted digivolves into, Skull Greymon, and Tai loses his confidence. Sora kind of helps Tai kind of get over this. And then, of course, Tai, is able to overcome his fear and actually fully awaken his crest when Sora is captured by a Digimon that is called Datamon. As I mentioned back in Tai's video, Datamon wanted to make a clone of Sora that he could control, and then he could use that clone along with Biyomon and Sora's crest to, make Biyomon digivolve, and then force, Biyomon, Birdramon, whatever she would digivolve into after that, into fighting against, Edamon to free Datamon, because Datamon has to work for Edamon for whatever reason, I don't remember. But of course, that doesn't end up happening. Tai is able to save Sora, and then of course, Tai is whisked back to the real world for a while. And of course, the rest of the DigiDestined, unfortunately, they all get split up. Matt and Joe, Sora, Mimi, TK, or Tai, TK, Joe, they all get split up. And Sora actually is kind of the one that kind of watches out for the rest of them. She, as I mentioned in Tai's video, she warned Agumon against the amnesia mushrooms. She also prevented one of the times when Joe would have gotten in trouble at the diner where him and Matt were forced to work by Digitamamon. And then, of course, she also shows up, and I'll mention this more in the Mimi video, but she ends up in where Mimi is, because Mimi has kind of, Mimi ends up in a castle where she's treated like a princess, and unfortunately, Devimon's plan is that she, her crest will go dark, and, because she's not being sincere, she's not being good, and Sora shows up and she kind of helps, knock some sense into Mimi. She doesn't actually hurt Mimi, but she, helps Mimi, no, you can't do this, Mimi. You can't act this way. It's not good. And, that helps Mimi. And then, when they're all reunited, Sora unfortunately has to face a problem that she's been having. And that comes from the fact that she interacted with Devimon at one point, and he told her that she is incapable of love. even though her crest is love, she is incapable of it. And she thinks that because, like, in like one of the last conversations she had with her mom, she told her mom that she hated her. She, got very angry at her mom when her mom wanted her to stop playing soccer. And so she Sora kind of, believes this. She believes that she's incapable of love, that it was wrong for her to be given the crest of love. And via Tai and Biyomon, they're kind of able to convince her of that this is not true, because at one point Devimon tries to attack, and Biyomon protects Sora, and unfortunately she kind of gets hurt. Biyomon gets hurt in the process, but she still digivolves into Birdramon to try to fight Devimon, or fight whatever it was it had been sent after them. And Sora, and at that point in time, she does proclaim that she loves Birdramon, and that then has Birdramon digivolve into Garudamon for the first time. So Sora is able to pull that off, and then she starts getting some more of her confidence back. Of course, they all end up reuniting after that. They deal with Myotismon a little bit in the digital world, and they go back to the real world. And they end up dealing with some of that. Sora has a little more of an interaction with her mother. Sora's mother and father, we don't really see her father during the first season. He's more in the second season, but we do see her mother a little bit in this one. I don't remember if it's stated specifically up front in the original series, but her mother is a flower arranger. She's like a master, grand master type thing at that. Which is different rankings that you can get to in different flower designs and different classes and stuff like that. But throughout the time when they're in the real world for a little while, Biyomon pretends to be a a stuffed animal, of course. And when a bunch of when Myotismon sends a bunch of his Digimon to start attacking and start bringing people into the TV station, Sora's off at soccer practice. And Biyomon defends Sora's mother. I cannot remember Sora's mother's name off the top of my head. It's further down in my notes. She defends Sora's mother and sends off the Bakumon that are there to attack them. And her mother's like, but you are a stuffed animal. What? And Biyomon's like, you have to tell me where the soccer field is now, because Sora's in trouble. And Biyomon and Sora's mother actually end up dressing up as Bakumon, so they can they go to the soccer field, and they find that that Sora's not there, that all those kids were taken to the TV station, or the area where Myotismon took all of them, or had them all brought to, and they make their way into the TV station or so. While there, Sora finds Mimi, and because Mimi and her family were brought in there, and she finds them, and she kind of uses the same trick that her and Joe used against the Bakumon in the Yokomon Village against the Bakumon here, because there's a guy there that has a radio, or a boombox, and they make a recording of them saying, Bakumon lose your power, on the boombox, so that way it's loud enough that it affects all the Bakumon, and then they're able to escape, and or they cause problems, and that helps some of them escape. Her and Mimi are able to escape, and actually two Bakumon, the two Bakumon grab Sora, and then it's revealed that those are of course her mother and Biyomon, and they're able to fight against that, and then they're of course all there, and Sora ends up having to escape. Mimi unfortunately ends up kind of being stuck at the TV station for a little while, because Myotismon makes everybody fall asleep. But Sora is able to escape, and she has Lilymon, who is the kind of the mega or ultimate level version of Palmon, which I will get to in, of course, Mimi's video. But she takes her, and so she got hurt by Myotismon, and Sora's protecting her with Garudamon. And of course, then they have the incident with, where they all witness what happens with Kari and Wizardmon and Godamon, but Sora is actually with Matt and Kari, and when Kari surrenders herself to them, to the Digimon that are there that are coming to try to find Kari, she surrenders herself to protect Sora and Matt. And, then, they all head off to the TV station area where... that's where the big battle happens with Myotismon, and that's where, Wizardmon sacrifices himself, so Sora's there, and she sees that, and she's, there, she watches as, Godamon digivolves for the first time into Anjumamon and everything. And then, of course, then they have to deal with Venom Myotismon, and that's not fun. But they're able to, they get the, the arrows of light and hope and War Greymon and Metal Garurumon and everything that comes into that. And then they have, and then they all have to, they rainbow teleport travel back up to the rift, the digital world that's floating in the sky above them, covered in rifts, and they make their way back up there. Sora's mom is there when they are leaving. And she, she's very encouraging of Sora and that she has to do this. And unfortunately, one of the things that happens is Sora has always kind of been a bit of a mediator between Tai and Matt. And throughout the course of the first season, this is quite evident. Not too much in the second season. It is there a bit in Digimon Try, but it's not there too much in the original, in the second season. But in the first season, it's quite obvious that she is very much a mediator between the two of them. Because, Tai and Matt have very different ideals. And one of the things that happens is, they go together and they have to deal with the Dark Masters. And Tai and Matt, of course, end up fighting, and this corresponds with, when Cherrymon kind of messed with Matt to make him think that Tai was the enemy, that Tai was trying to replace him in TK's eyes type of a thing. And Sora actually ends up yelling at the two of them, and I actually use that quote for the quote on the end of this video. But it's like, it's like, you always think that I can handle everything, that you leave everyone for me to take care of. But, it's like, it's like, that's too much pressure type of a thing, is what she yells at Tai and Matt. And she goes with Tai's group when they kind of split up into their three groups. Matt goes off on his own, and then Mimi and Joe go off together. And then Izzy and Tai and TK and Sora and Kari all stay together. And then when Kari gets sick, Tai leaves Sora in charge of her and TK, while him and Izzy go and look for medicine for Kari, of course. And right before they're able to be reunited, when, Tai's able to, when they're able to find the medicine that Kari needs, they take them back, and they're kind of separated in that they fall into this underground, the sewer system in the, in Mashidramon's domain. And they end up there, and one of the things that happens is, so Sora's still left in charge of protecting Kari and TK, and Kari ends up possessed, kind of. She starts glowing at one point because they come across these new Maramon, which are these little green sludge type Digimon that are being beat by, I think it was Warmonzemon, who's like a giant evil teddy bear. That's like kind of whipping them to get them to work. So they're in charge of like powering Mashidramon's city. They're the power source for the city. And Kari, of course, doesn't like seeing this, and she, it's kind of her crest of light kind of activating and kind of like going into overdrive. And, I'll talk a little bit more about that with like what happens with Kari when that happens. But, Sora's kind of witness to this, and so is TK. And, and then Sora is able to, protect Kari in that case, and, protect TK and everything. And then when it comes time for them to have their final battle against, Piedmon, when Piedmon shows up, well, first they deal with Lady Devimon, and Sora and Kari just glare at her. They're like, she looks like a witch. I just love their glaring at Lady Devimon. But like Tai sends Sora off because she has to go and find Matt and Joe and Mimi. She has to go find the others. And, Sora goes off to do that. She has Garudamon. They fly off to go do that and find Matt. They are able to, they find the general area where Matt is. And I mentioned this in Matt's video. Matt, of course, has his kind of this depression moment that he has, where he ends up in this dark cave. And Gobblemon's able to help him get out of this problem, this depression type of a thing that he's in. That doesn't mean that, like, it's like, I am well aware of the fact that depression is not something that just can be, like, turned on and turned off. That's not, as easily, gotten rid of as dealing with that cave that Matt has to deal with. And Sora ends up having to deal with something very similar to that, because TK's not with her, TK's still with Tai. Sora falls down. I don't remember exactly what happens, but it's like Sora ends up in this like dark pit, and Biyomon's there with her, and Joe and Matt, because Joe had already found Matt. I'll go over that in Joe's video. And Joe and Matt end up going into this, ravine area. I don't think TK's there. Like, I don't think that he was. I think he was still off with Ty. I don't remember if. No, TK was with Sora at that time. Sorry, yes, TK was with Sora at that time, if I remember correctly. And Ty or Matt and Joe, because Sora's like she's like so much pressure on her type of a thing, and it's kind of feeding off of the same thing that like Devimon kind of like fed off of before, with making her think that, oh, you're not capable of love, you're too much pressure, you have to do all of this yourself and everything, and so Sora unfortunately has to deal with that, and what ends up happening is Matt and Joe are able to help pull her out of it. Literally, they kind of help pull her out of the depression. And yes, I am well aware of the fact that depression is not something that can just easily be, pull someone out of like that. Sometimes if you snap out of a depression, that might be a little bit what it feels like. And of course, the cave disappears around Sora. But in the case of context of the digital world, this is, these different shadow, these caves and everything. Pop up a lot, and unfortunately, it's like when you're at a very dark spot, and it's like when you've kind of reached the bottom of part of your depression, it's this cave that becomes a representation. And unfortunately, Matt and Sora both had to deal with this, but they're both able to get out of it with the help of, Matt has Gabumon, and then Sora has Biyomon and Matt and Joe to help her get out of it. And they all they all head back to go help Ty, and they get there, and unfortunately Piedmon starts turning everyone into keychains, and Sora's role in this is that everybody starts getting turned into keychains, and between her and Gomamon, they're able to grab Matt's keychain and get it to TK, and then TK is able to get finally activates his Crest of Hope, and then we get Magna Angemon, and then we of course get Piedmon defeated with everyone working together. And then we have Apocalypse. Yep, as I said, we deal with Apocalypse. There's not, they deal with Apocalypse. He shows up. He, digitizes all of them. He, he destroys each of their crests. He digivolves their Digimon, and then he, atomizes them or turns them into, chunks of data, which is not a fun thing to picture. And of course, their Digimon rally with them, of course, and they help each other, and it's, Sora's love is everybody's love. It's your crest is not only powered by what's inside of you, but it's powered by those around you. So we get that, and they're able to do that, and then of course after they defeat Apocalypse, that's when the Jedi does the whole thing of, well, you're gonna have to return to the real world very soon because the digital date's going to get shut and you're not going to be able to come back, and all that fun stuff that happens. And Sora and Biyomon are of course saying goodbye to each other. They're sitting up in this tree, and it's like Sora's like, they're like nuzzling each other, and it's like, you're my best friend, Biyomon, type thing, and saying goodbye, which you're saying goodbye to, it's like by technicality, the Digimon, the DigiDestined haven't necessarily known their Digimon for more than a couple of months. But, with the amount of time that they were in the digital world, and, Ty and like Koromon's case, it was even like a couple of weeks. And actually out of all of them, Kari had the least amount of time with her Digimon in that first group because she didn't find Gatomon until when they came back from the digital world the first time and everything. So she actually got the least amount of time, but we still see those bonds between them and their Digimon and each other are still very, very strong. And of course, Sora says goodbye to Biyomon, and of course they get on the train and they all leave the train car and they leave. And then we get into 2000, which is where we, with the Digimon, the movie, the Our War Games type of thing. Sora is not super involved in this movie. She's kind of more there in the background. Her and Ty had a bit of an argument because Ty had given her a hair clip for her birthday. And this is in the time frame of the story when Sora still has a crush on Ty, and where Ty still seems to have a crush on Sora. So it's before she started to develop feelings for Matt. And she's angry at Ty because he gave her this hair clip, and he's like, so you think my hair's ugly? And he's like, Ursula's like, so you don't like my hair now? And he's like, I can never tell. You're always wearing a hat. Well, now you don't like my hat, type thing. And and it's just this petty argument thing. But it's like she wants you to be nice to her, Tai, type of a thing. And at one point, Tai and Izzy call to, try to get Sora to come and help them with what's going on with, with what's going on with, Caramon and Infamon and Diaboromon and everything. And they call the house, or they call her apartment, and her mom. I don't know if this was just in the English dub or if they had this in the actual Japanese dub or not. But like they have Sora's mom into the phone and she's talking and she's like, well, Sora's not here yet. And then Sora walks in. Oh, wait, she just got here. One moment. And like, it's like you can still hear that Sora and her mom over the phone, like Izzy's listening. And I don't remember if Ty's listening too, but like Izzy's listening. No, Izzy's the one that called because Ty wouldn't call because Ty is emotionally stunted for the most part. And I didn't mention that in his video, but he's definitely emotionally stunted. But like we hear Sora and her mother argue, like talking about him. I was like, but it's Tai, and Tai wants to talk to you, and she's like, I don't want to talk to Tai, and she's like, but it's really important. I don't want to talk to Tai. Just make something up. He was like, but I already told him you came home. Well, then make something up. And like Sora leaves, and like you hear like a slamming door in the background, and then Sora's home like, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. Bye. Click. I'm like, okay. and like Izzy just goes, Sora says she's not home. Matt or Ty. And Ty goes like, all of this is over a stupid hair clip type thing. And like at one point, and I don't remember if this is necessary, I don't think this is in the actual like the English version of the movie dub, but I've seen clips from like the original Japanese one, and like Sora like at one point almost shows up to like knock on Ty's door, and she like shows up and she's like about ready to knock on the door, so she could have helped but she didn't. I am going to assume that at some point the rest of the DigiDestined, like Mimi and Joe and Sora were fully more informed about what happened with Diaboromon. They do that, and then of course we have the summer of that same summer or later that summer in 2000, where they all go back to the digital world, and Jenna has to have them they have to get their crests, they have to give up their crests in order to rejuvenate the border of the digital world, the protective border and everything. So we have those moments. And then of course we have in 2002 is of course when the Digimon season Digimon Adventure 2.0 happens, of course, and we have Ty and the others are of course all older. Ty and his group are I can never remember if it's that they're going into middle school or they're going into high school. I think they were going into high school or middle school at that point in time. I don't remember exactly, but Sora's older, and her and Izzy end up going to the digital world like the second time when the Dave is in his group go to the digital world, and Sora is kind of connects with Yoli, and then Izzy of course connects with Cody, and Sora actually ends up getting, or Yoli actually ends up getting the Digi Egg of Love for her Digimon, for Hawkmon, and I'll go over that in Yoli's video. But Sora is there, and she kind of helps encourage Yoli in this. And then, of course, later on, we have a moment where they return to the digital world because Sora got like a distress signal on her Digivice from Biyomon. And this is, of course, when the Digimon Emperor is still in control of the digital world. And they get to this western town type thing, where that was where the signal came from Biyomon, because Izzy can track stuff and he tracks it down to here, and Sora and the Davis's group go there, and they end up interacting with the Digimon named Starmon, and Starmon explains, well, yeah, there was a Digimon named Biyomon in here, and we got all these wanted posters for her, and he explains like, well, and he shows like he has like I don't remember exactly what it is, but he reveals that he has a dark spiral on him that is so he's under the control of the Digimon Emperor, and then he locks up the group. And then his kind of assistant Digimon, because Starmon is like the sheriff, and then he has a deputy, he's just called Deputymon, that looks like a gun, and like Deputymon like takes Sora and Kari and Yoli and their Digimon with him, but leaves Cody and TK and I don't remember. I think TK was there, but leaves like Cody and Davis, and I think TK is there with them. Leaves them because like girls don't cheat at poker. Like Mon goes off, it like takes the girls to go play poker. I don't remember, but then like they end up finding Biyomon and everything because she was in the cell, and Sora gets Biyomon back, and they save the town. They destroy the Dark Spire. They defeat Starmon and free him from the Dark Spiral. And then of course we get the moments where of course then we have the anniversary for when they fought Myotismon, and they all gather together again, and they get some more advice from Sora and everything. I mean, she's one of the one that's around a lot, so it's not like it would be that hard for them to be able to get advice from her if necessary. But she gives them advice, of course, to the younger kids, and she's there when they go and visit the TV station and see Wizardmon interact with Kari and Godamon again. And then, of course, she's not part of the group that goes camping, but she's like encouraging of it. I'm assuming she has other stuff. Sora seems to have not been playing soccer for a while, but she seems to have taken up the an interest in tennis, actually, which is a good thing for her. She has a bit interest in tennis and everything, and she seems to be on a much better relationship with her mother. That seems to be on a better relationship with her mother by the time the first movie rolls around, and that seems to have just continued for Sora, which is a good thing, because it helps her and her mom. And I'll talk about her dad in a little bit. But we of course meet her dad in the second season, and what ends up happening is of course in the second season, partway through the year of the second season, they have the Christmas, and the younger DigiDestined get the older, get them their surprise of all their Digimon. So she has Biyomon, and she has Biyomon with her, and then of course they all go to Matt's concert. The older DigiDestined that are there go to Matt's concert that night, and while there, she's going to go and try to deliver some cookies to Matt, because during that whole time frame in that like 2 years or so is kind of when that's when she started to realize that she had her feelings for Tai lessened and more just turned into friendship, and then her feelings for Matt started to shift and turn into more of more affection and more love type of thing for that, as opposed to just, she still has like friendship love for Tai, of course, but she has more romantic love for Matt. And Tai and her interact, and he of course encourages her to tell Matt how she feels. And like after she walks off, Agumon's in the background like, I hadn't realized how mature you'd gotten, Tai. And like so he very much encourages Sora to do that. And because it had been so long in between like when I had originally watched the series and then like when I had like rewatched it and everything. When I had first watched The Revenge of Diaboromon, which of course I will talk about, I had initially thought that it was Tai was still jealous of the fact that Matt and Sora were together, and that had always confused me. And then when I rewatched Adventure 2.0, I had forgotten about this moment where Tai encourages Sora, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes me feel better. That made me feel a lot better. When I'm like, okay, I forgot about that part. Okay, no, that's better. And so they're at the concert, they deal with the attack, and then when Tai, and then of course when they release all of the Digimon all over the world that are causing problems, and Azulongmon gives them power, so Biyomon can now Digivolve all the way up to Garudamon again. Sora and Yoli end up in Russia, where they deal with a whole large amount of Flymon that are attacking. And they meet a couple of Russian DigiDestined. I do not remember their names off the top of my head. As I said, I will have a miscellaneous DigiDestined video that I will do when I'm done with the main group. And these three here will be in it. But they deal with the Russian DigiDestined, and they fight all these Flygon. Wrong. Flymon. Yes, Russia is being attacked by a large amount of Flygon. Pokemon joke. Oh, I do that all the time. I was just like, wait a second, is that a Pokemon or a Digimon? Well, it doesn't end in Mon. Yes, okay, then it's a Digimon. But they deal with that, and then of course they help deal with the Dark Spore children and everything in regards to with Oikawa. and they're able to, deal with that. And Sora is, of course, there for the final battle because, they return to the summer camp, and then they go to the digital world via, being brought there by their by their lights on their digivices and their bond with the Digimon. And then, of course, they all use their power to, their light from the digivices to weaken Malamyotismon, and they're able to defeat him. Then in 2003 is, of course, that summer of 2003 is, of course, when, the Armageddonmon happens, the Revenge of Biyomon happens. Sora is off at tennis camp at this point in time, and she returns just in time for the final battle. So she witnesses Armageddonmon, and she witnesses, Omnimon giving his power to Imperial Dramon with the Omni Blade, and then he turns into Imperial Dramon Paladin mode to defeat Armageddonmon. So she's there for that. Now, of course, is when we get into Digimon Tri, which Sora has kind of a bit of an interesting arc through this story. She is, of course, in high school at this point in time. She's having a hard time because at this point in time, she seems to be kind of debating between like Tai and Matt again. At this point in time, because she doesn't seem to be exclusively with Matt, but it's not like she's dating Tai or anything. But it's like Matt has a concert and then Tai has a soccer game, and they're both on the same day, and Sora is just having a hard time trying to figure out, well, if I go here, then I can do this, but then if I do this, then I have to do that, but then I can't wear this, but I need to wear this, and like she's just having this whole problem with trying to figure that out. And she's at high school with Tai and Matt and Izzy and everything. Yeah, Izzy's still in high school at this point in time. I'm pretty sure, well, no, I know Izzy's in high school, but I was trying to remember if he, like, graduates early. Because, as I mentioned, Izzy has his own tech company. And I will go over that in Izzy's video, which will be the next video after Sora, obviously. After this video. But they have to fight the Kawagamon that show up at the airport, and her and Biyomon are, of course, reunited, as are the rest of the DigiDestined and their Digimon that are there. And she, of course, she deals with that. And then, of course, there's, they bring in Meiko and Meikumon, and they become friends with them. And then they have the day where they go to the spa. And, of course, all the girls have fun at the spa. And then they have to run around in the boys' area at one point because, Biyomon and Meikumon, unfortunately, go missing. And, they have to go with them and try to find them. At some point, I may just like go through and do like a review specifically of like every single Digimon Adventure Tri movie, like the movies that they made. It's like all the episodes put together in like a compilation, because there was Reunion, Determination, Confession, Loss, Coexist, and Future, because there was 6 of them, I think. And they all put about like 4 or 5 little half-hour episodes together into one movie, and then they seamlessly worked it together. And I may at some point do like a review of like every single one, but of like each individual movie, and like the Digimon 2000 or 2020 as well. We'll see. But first we'll get through the character videos first. And of course, they go to the spa and they have fun there, and they become very good friends with Meikumon and everything. And they get fun with that, and they have fun with that, and of course they're happy to see Leomon again when he pops up. And unfortunately, they're there and they're witness to when Leomon dies again. And then of course we get the moment where all of the Digimon have unfortunately become infected with the virus type thing that is comes from Meikumon. And, so she unfortunately has that problem. All the Digimon get infected with that, and they all end up having to, they have to reboot the digital world, as I said before. And that is a very hard thing, because we have, all of the Tamers is what they are in season 3. All of the DigiDestined that are there, we have them watching, and then we have their Digimon that are all fighting, unfortunately, at the same time. And, that's just a hard thing to watch, as I will probably say every time that I mention it. And, we get the reboot happens, and then, of course, the digital world has been rebooted, so now they want to find out if their Digimon are better. At one point, when everything was going down, before all the Digimon got infected, Sora actually was, like, calling everyone to kind of check in on everyone. And Biyomon makes a comment to her. She's like, Sora, you're so good at taking care of everybody else, but you really need to worry about taking care of yourself too. And I don't remember exactly what the rest of the conversation was, but I don't remember if part of it was like Biyomon just going, "Well, you take care of everyone, and I'll take care of you," type of a thing. And because Sora very much acts like a mom to the group. Um, I wouldn't put it, it's like the closest one that I would put as like the dad to the group would be either Joe or Izzy, because Matt and Ty are definitely not the dads of the group, but I would definitely put Sora as the mom of the group. So we unfortunately have that incident that happens where they all have their Digimon. They lose their Digimon, and the Digimon, that they all and the DigiDestined, of course, all go into the digital world where they find each of their Digimon in their little baby forms. And Sora and Yokomon are actually the two that have the hardest time reconnecting, unfortunately. Um, and Sora brought all this food for everyone to eat, so all the Digimon are happy and eating, and Yokomon is actually kind of eating off on her own as opposed to with the rest of the group, and she just doesn't really want anything to do with Sora. Yokomon just keeps just like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. I don't like you, and like keeps like flying. When she digivolves into Biyomon, she keeps flying off, and then at one point they all get like separated, and Biyomon and Sora are in a desert, and Biyomon still doesn't want anything to do with Sora, and they're in the desert, and Sora and Yokomon stumble across Mako, and one of the things that Biyomon has said to Sora is she's very, very hostile, and she tells her there's no way we were ever friends, and it's just very hard to watch because of course we know how much the Digimon, if they had their memories, we know how strong their bond would be with their Digidestined anyway. And Sora's there and she's watching Tai and Koromon bond, and Matt and Cinnamon and the others all bond with their Digimon, and Yokomon just wants nothing to do with her, and that's very hard to watch, in all honesty. There's a lot about Digimon's Adventure Try and into Digimon 2020 that is the last evolution, that is kind of hard to watch if you're either not prepared for it or if you're one of the people that has become emotionally invested in these characters like I have. But they end up, when Sora and Biyomon are in the desert, they find Mako, and Biyomon, she like finds them food, but she's just like, well, I don't want you dying on me, and she keeps pretending like she doesn't want Sora, and Sora is of course very, very sad because Biyomon won't accept her, and Sora, Mako tries to console Sora, and she's like, well, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just you have to find a new way to bond with your Pokemon. With your Pokemon. With your Digimon. That bond is still there. It can't be broken. It's just you have to, find a way to, reawaken that bond. And, Sora just has a hard time with that. And at one point, her, Ty, and Matt end up sitting. I don't remember if this is before or after they're separated and then they come back together. I don't remember if it's before or after, but like Sora, Ty, and Matt are like sitting and talking, and neither Matt nor Ty have any idea what to do to try to make Sora feel better. They're like, I'm sorry that Yokomon and or Biyomon don't like you. You're a good person. They're not very good with that. And we get these more problems that happen. Then of course they're attacked by Dark Geni. All the group ends up back together and they're attacked by Dark Geni. And so we have all these problems. And at some point in this, we see all the Digimon see each other digivolving. Being able to reunite with their Digidestined and everything. Now they're able to digivolve. And at one point, because Sora and Biyomon still can't digivolve yet, they do end up, Biyomon like sees the other digivolve. She's like, could we do that? If like we work together, could we do that? That type of Digimon becoming that strong and powerful and everything. And not that, and it's not like Biyomon wants power for just power is everything. It's Biyomon had kept trying to push Sora away because she still felt this bond with Sora. It scared her, and she didn't want Sora to get hurt. Because the digital world was a dangerous place, and she didn't want Sora to get hurt, and she thought that if she kept pushing Sora away, then Sora would leave the digital world and she wouldn't get hurt in the digital world. And that's what Biyomon was thinking. That's what Yokomon and Biyomon were thinking. And you know she's it just ends up finally working, and Biyomon and Sora are finally able to reform, start to reawaken that bond, and they are able to they're able to digivolve. It's Sora, and they're finally able to do that and everything. Biyomon tells her that you're too gentle of a spirit for what needs to be done right thing. And it's not that she was weak, it's not that she thought Sora was weak, but they are finally able to digivolve, and then of course that's where we get Phoenixmon. Who is obviously based off of a phoenix, blah 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 blah, rising from the ashes. And they're able to work together, and they're able to digivolve, of course, and so they're there, and they're able to defeat whatever it is that they had to fight at that point in time. They kind of end up having to like refight some of the Dark Masters, if I remember correctly. But they deal with Dark Jedi, and then there's a lot of problems that happen, and then of course they end up back in the real world, and they end up back at the school, and then they end up back in the digital world, and lots of stuff happens, and Sora and Biyomon are now much more, they're more able to be affectionate toward each other. Biyomon is much more willing to do that now, and and then they end up, of course, everything happens with Tai, and they think that Tai and Nishijima are dead, and Kari then kind of loses it, as I said, and Kari, yeah, God. And then of course we get Ordinamon, and that whole issue there, and we have all the DigiDestined trying to work together at this point in time, and eventually they snap Kari out of her depression for thinking Tai's dead, and of course Tai shows back up, and they're all able to work together, and then of course Izzy is able to reawaken, hack into whatever it was that was inside of Mekumon that gave all the Digimon their memories back, and so they're all able to then they all digivolve to their full forms, and then of course they all digivolve into Omnimon's merciful mode, and then of course unfortunately they take out Ordinamon, and they release Mekumon. And as far as I'm aware, we never get a thing where it's stated that Mekumon comes back. So Mekumon is kind of one of those Digimon that is gone forever. I mean, Meiko and the rest of the DigiDestined, and Meiko's parents, because they knew about Mekumon, they still have their memories of her, but Mekumon, as far as I'm aware, is one of the only Digimon that has not come back yet. Or that may not have the chance to come back. But so we have that whole issue, they all digivolve together, and we get merciful mode, and then they fight Ordinamon and defeat her, and then and then of course 3 months later or 6 months later at Christmas or whatever, there's the worlds have been restored, of course, and at Christmas Tai calls Meiko, and I don't remember if everyone else is there, if it's just Tai. But of course, it's like, you're still going to be our friend. Of course, this sentiment is probably echoed by all the rest of the DigiDestined. And then we move into 2010, which is, of course, Digimon 2020, the Digimon The Last Evolution. Takes 5 years, takes place 5 years after the Digimon Adventure Tri, so Tai and the rest of the group are all out of high school and either in college or off working on their own careers. And Sora's story is actually told a little bit different than what I've talked about for Matt and Joe so far, or Matt and Tai so far. They actually had a short little kind of, I don't know if I'd call it an OVA, but they had like a short little like prequel thing that they had for this, where they have Sora, and where it's centered around Sora and Biyomon. And at one point, Sora is working on trying to become a Grand Master Flower Arranger like her mother. And Sora ends up you know, she's busy working and everything, and at one, you know, training and everything, and at one point Biyomon comes in with like information about like, oh, there's this Digimon attack and the others are there and everything, and you know, should we go help and everything. And so, you know, she's just like, I'm, you know, I'm working, leave me alone type of thing. I don't have, you know, I don't have time for that. I have to do this. And I think part of that is to do a little bit with you know, I wouldn't say that like Sora's mom or dad would like to would to like force her to stop being a DigiDestined. Um, when I talk about her father in a little bit, when I'm done with this part, you'll find that her father very much would not have a problem with her being a DigiDestined, and her mother doesn't seem to have a problem with her being a DigiDestined. So it's not like they would force her to want to do something that she doesn't want to do. And Sora does seem to have a talent for flower arranging. I myself have actually taken flower arranging classes, and depending on certain things or depending on certain rules you have to follow, sometimes it can be a very hard thing, sometimes it can be a very easy thing. It just depends on, you know, kind of your artistic skill to begin with, and then also, um, you know, I mean, like mine were not like ones that were going to be shown at like a flower show and judged by like a panel of judges that have been doing this their entire lives. Sora's in this case are, unfortunately. And unfortunately, one of the things that has happened is, um, you know, later after this battle happens, it's at the beginning of the movie they have to battle Paramon again, and you know, Sora finds out that everything went okay and everything, and then she does like a video call with Mimi, and Mimi and her are talking, and Biyomon and Sora make up, and you know, so you know, she's fine, and she's, you know, she talks to Mimi a little bit about what's going on, and you know, Sora's gonna have this flower arranging show and everything. And Sora isn't very involved in like what happens with like Matt and Ty and like with Izzy and TK and then with them trying to figure out what's going on with Menawa. She never even meets Menawa. I'm assuming like Izzy probably sent like emails to the others to kind of inform them, but she doesn't end up meeting Menawa or doesn't end up really interacting with anything like that. Um, but you know, she has this, you know, problem with the, you know, she doesn't hear what Minowa explains about, like, you know, your Digimon are going to lose their potential and everything. But, you know, that your Digimon aren't going to lose your potential. It's like as you grow, you lose your potential. And that, you know, your Digimon will disappear when you're kind of out of potential. And Sora doesn't hear this. I would assume that Izzy may have explained some of it to the rest of them. And we actually find out that Sora has already gotten, like, the timer on her Digivice on the back of her Digivice phone type thing that like Izzy has, that Izzy made for each of them, and she's had that timer already. And unfortunately, one of the things that happens is I think it's because Sora's not one of the ones that gets put into the coma. The rest of the group are, but Sora isn't, and Sora's not put into the coma, and we end up getting the scene where it's like Ty and Matt are ready to go and fight Menawa, and the rest of them are either in comas or just about to be put into comas in Izzy's case. And Sora just has Biyomon there, and they're in like her apartment or whatever it is that she's living, and she has Biyomon, and she's just like, she has Biyomon, and she's like, I'm not going to go to this battle. And she's like holding Biyomon. Cry, yeah. And she's holding Biyomon, and she's like, I'm going to spend the rest of the time that I have left right now here with you. The rest of the time that they have left with each other together. And she does. She's still rooting, of course, for Ty and Matt to defeat Menawa, to release the others, of course, but she doesn't take part in the battle. And we get another flash of Sora, and we see that her Digivice, you know, Biyomon's gone, and her Digivice is stone. Same thing that happens to Matt and Ty. And, you know, she's technically the first one that loses her Digimon. Yeah. She's the first one that loses her Digimon out of the group. And she, you know, I mentioned, you know, Ty blows the whistle at one point, and Sora hears the whistle. Even in the real world, she hears it because of the connection she has to the others. And she did end up making a flower arrangement for the show, and it was, it's a very, very nice one, and it's dedicated to her friends, in regards to, how much her friends mean to her and everything, and that again goes back to her crest of love. Um, and then of course we get Digimon 2027, or is, the year 2027 in the Digimon timeline, which, as I said, is 6 years from now. I don't know if Digimon is going to do something where they like do something where it's like I would love it if like Digimon did, where, after everything, because they did the Digimon Adventure Try, and, in the 2020, Digimon 2020 for like the 20-year anniversary stuff that they were doing, and I loved those when I first heard about them. I'm like, oh God, please dub them into English, please. And I was so happy when they did, and I was so happy when I finally got to see them. But I would like it if, like, in 2027, because, like, timeline wise for this Digimon, that's when all the DigiDestined are all grown up and they have their own kids. And yes, we kind of get an idea of what they're all up to at this point in time. Like, Sora at this point in time, she's become a famous fashion designer, and she specializes in like Japanese kimonos, and she works alongside Biyomon, so she gets Biyomon back, obviously. And she still has like, flower arrangements that she has in her studio, so she probably does those herself, so she still has that there. And her and, as I mentioned in Matt video, Sora and Matt are married, and they have a daughter who has a Yokomon that looks like Matt, and they have a son that has a Sunamon that looks like, a son that has a Sunamon that looks like Sora. And of course, the daughter has Matt's hair color, the son has Sora hair color. So we have that. And so I would very much like it if like Digimon as like, I don't know if that would qualify as like but that wouldn't qualify as like the 25-year anniversary. That would be like the 23, or I don't remember exactly what year anniversary that would be, but I wouldn't mind if like Digimon, like the company, like they like, maybe they dub it, maybe they wouldn't, but like maybe they release like some final movie that is, we get flashes of like all the rest of the group, Mimi, Joe, Izzy, TK, Kari, Davis, and all those girls, like all of them having to say goodbye to their Digimon, the same way that like Sora and Tai and Matt did. And they all have to say goodbye to them and everything. And then we cut to, so many years later, when all of them start having kids, that, that's when they get their Digimon back. We find out how they get their Digimon back. And it has to do, like, as I said, it starts to do with, like as I said from someone else, it was like that, it's like when they get their kids, when they have their kids, there's all this new potential of what they can help their kids become. And then they get their Digimon back. And I would love that. I would love it if they did that with Digimon. That would just make me so happy. And now we're going to move on to relationships. So, Sora's family is her father, Haruhiko, and her mother is Toshiko. Her father, Sora's father, is actually an anthropology professor at Kyoto University. And, we find out a bit about him. I didn't mention this with Ty or Matt yet, but there's been a few other like audio CDs and everything like that they've released for Digimon that were only in Japanese. Unfortunately, they didn't translate them to English, or they didn't have like the English cast dub them. Which I would assume dubbing a CD would actually be a bit easier than dubbing like the actual anime, because you don't have to match lip flaps to a CD, but or to just audio. But they did like this audio where they like each of the DigiDestined to a degree at the time, like having to deal with like in between when they get back from the digital world the first time, after they defeat the Dark Masters and Apocalypse, and when they go back. And this, that's like later that summer, or like the next summer or whatever it was, where they give up their crest. And like Sora ended up, like Sora's one was like a letter to her father, where she writes to her father about like everything that happened in the digital world, and he asks her all these questions, and he becomes very much interested in the digital world. And then we see kind of the result of that in, he was overseas at the time due to everything that happened with Myotismon and the city and everything, but he heard about it later on from his wife and his daughter and everything. And later on in Digimon Adventure 2.0, Yoli actually ends up meeting Sora's dad, because her and her class were on a trip to Kyoto, which is in Japan. That's something that happens a lot. usually like in at some point in elementary, middle, or high school or so. It is very, as far as I'm aware, because it happens so much in different anime that I've watched, that they go on like a class trip to Kyoto, and then you get to visit all these different shrines and everything, and it's a look at like the history of Japan for your area. And Yoli ends up running into her Mr. Takenouchi, runs into Sora's dad, and also Joe's brother Jim, who of course I'll talk a little bit more about when I get to Joe, which will be after Izzy. But she meets them, and they kind of help her deal with some of these Digimon that have popped up in Kyoto. They don't destroy the Digimon; these are Digimon that just unfortunately have come through a rift, and that's been caused by problems. And she helps get them all sent back to the digital world, as opposed to them causing trouble. And Sora's father ends up explaining to Yoli that he thinks that a lot of these Digimon are a combination of the spirit world and the digital world, like the digital web, like the networks and everything that came along with computers and phones and radio waves and everything like that, like kind of a combination of the two of them, because he compares Digimon to like the creatures in like Japanese mythology that were like the different objects that would come alive in people's houses and stuff like that. There were usually like very, very old objects that would come alive, like antiques that would come alive because they've been around so long that they've gathered like a part of a soul, or like a spirit has started to inhabit them. And he talks about that, and I kind of look, my take on it was kind of like, or like now that I'm a little bit older and I understand some of that a little bit more, it's like my kind of take on it is, it's like the digital world compared to, the spirit world is, because there's a lot of Digimon that are kind of like yokai type spirits, or they're obviously based off of that concept. There's a lot of Pokemon that are the same way. The very obviously one that is obviously obvious, redundant. The very obvious example is, of course, Kitsune, because in Digimon, in season 3, we have Cubimon, and we have in Pokemon, we of course have Ninetales. So that would be the very obvious equivalent of like very much a yokai type thing in both things. But then there's other ones that, are very much based on yokai, and other ones that are not, objects with a soul, or something brought into that light. And he explains that, and he helps Yoli. And later on we find out that Jim and Sora's mom and Sora's dad are actually helping with gathering information about different Digimon attacks around the world, and the Dark Spore Children, a lot of what would have happened on Christmas, in regards to they had to do the Digimon World Tour, like they're helping with that a lot. And as I said, they're very supportive parents. Sora's parents are some of the very supportive ones. We know that, Tai and Kari's parents are, of course, very supportive, specifically their mother. We don't see their father that much, but he does seem to be fairly supportive of everything. And then, of course, we have, TK and Matt's parents, and they're very supportive and everything, with, their father helping out at the TV station. He helps find them information that way, and same thing with their mother being a reporter. And, I'll talk about Izzy's parents in the next video, but they're rather supportive as well. And then even down the line, when we get to Ken's parents, several ways down the line, when I get to that, we find out more about that. I would say kind of the least involved DigiDestined parents, I would say kind of like Joe's parents, because they don't seem all that. They're okay with Goemon, but they're much more encouraging. Like, Joe, you have to become a doctor. That's what you're supposed to be. That's what your father is. You're going to become a doctor. His brother, Joe's brother, Jim, is more the supportive one. And then, of course, in regards to Mimi's parents, they kind of ran away from their problem. So I'll talk about those when I get to Joe and Mimi, of course, and I'll talk about Izzy's parents in the next video. And then, of course, as I mentioned with Sora's mom, she's a flower designer. And she met Sora's father when they were in college, and she had played tennis as well. So that's where Sora's, kind of a tennis skill comes from, is her mom. So we get a lot of that. She helped protect Sora from the Bakumon and everything, and Biyomon helped her. Then they dress up as Bakumon, and then they help. She witnesses, the battle kind of against Apocalypse and everything, and against Venomyotismon and everything. Well, she doesn't witness this. She witnesses they go up to the digital world because Myotismon put all the parents to sleep, and Sora's mother was one of the ones that was asleep and almost eaten by Venom Myotismon, which would not have been good. Of course, we have Sora's future family is, of course, Matt and their son and daughter. And then, of course, Matt's and Sora's relationship has always been a bit rocky. She more had the affection for Tai in the beginning, and then that changed and shifted into Matt, and she chooses Matt. And Tai, of course, as I mentioned, was very encouraging of Sora telling Matt how she feels when she made him homemade cookies before the concert as a symbol of her affection. And Matt's very protective of her at the concert when it's attacked by the Digimon, and she's kind of Matt's girlfriend type thing by the time Biyomon Strikes Back comes around. And then, of course, it's confirmed that they're together when they're married in the future and they have 2 children. Tai and Sora, they were friends when they were little kids because they were in like the same class, because that's mentioned several times throughout the series that they were in the same class as kids, like same like kindergarten or grade school classes at the time. And way back at Heightened View Terrace when they were kids before the attack happened with Big Greymon and Parrotmon. And of course she was very she's very much will stand up to Tai about his bullheadedness. It's like, I love that word, bullheadedness. I'm a Taurus, yes. I know exactly about being bullheaded and stubborn. But she very much has a lot of affection for Tai when they're younger, and then of course later on that shifts and it just becomes friendship. And Tai is very encouraging of her, of course. So I like that and everything. They're very together, and he's but they're still very, all the group is still friends with each other, of course, but he's still very, they're still very good friends. Izzy, Sora is kind of one of the first ones that acknowledges Izzy's intellect as being very helpful for them to have in the digital world in regards to his talents to be able to help them solve problems and stuff like that. Mimi and Sora, Mimi kind of looks more at Sora as like a tomboy, but they get along very, very well. She's not as in touch with her girly side as Mimi is, but as I said, I'm pretty sure that like at Sora and Matt's wedding that like Mimi was Sora's maid of honor, and that like whenever Mimi got married to whomever that may have been, actually we never get a confirmation about who Tai marries, who Izzy marries, who Mimi marries, who Joe marries, who TK marries, who Kari marries, who Davis marries. Or who Cody marries, because we know that Yoli and Ken end up together. But that'll be way back. That'll be down the line in the Yoli and then the Ken videos. But we don't know exactly beyond that. But so they're very much together. Sora and Mimi get along very well. They're very supportive of each other. At one point, when they're back in the real world, when they're looking around trying to find the 8th DigiDestined child, Sora and Mimi actually have to work together to fight Skull Maramon, who is not the Maramon that they fought, that Sora fought back at the Yokomon Village. It's a different Digimon, but he's just called Skull Maramon. He's like the next level up. He looks like if you took regular Maramon and gave him a lot of leather. Sora and Joe, they were, she respects him as an upperclassman and everything, gives her lots of respect and advice and everything. She gives him lots of respect and he gives her advice when necessary. They deal with each other during, the Devimon arc. They have to work together to fight the Bakumon, and, they have to work together very well there. It's not too much is involved with that. We don't see a whole lot of what grows from their friendship, but they're friends, of course. Sora is very protective of TK. She looks at very paternal brother type of a thing that she has for him. She's very protective of him and Kari. That's kind of a very similar relationship there. she's protective of all of the group and everything. I mean, all of the group is protective of each other, of course. So it's like, oh, you hurt my friend, now I'm going to hurt you, or oh, I'm going to protect my friend, or whatever the case may be. And so we get a lot of that. She's very, she keeps a very good eye on TK at various points of time. Matt trusts Sora to watch TK. Tai trusts Sora to watch Kari. Very similar to the way she is with TK, as I said. Helps protect them and everything. She was, trying to, help Kari and TK escape when Piedmon was attacking all of them and turning them all into keychains. Then we move into Davis's group. Sora finds Davis's antics very funny. He comments that he's, very much like Tai when they were a kid, and he'll make a good leader. So she's encouraging of the new ones. Sora and Yoli get along very, very well, along with Mimi. But Sora and Yoli get along very, very well, and they get lots of advice from each other. Sora gives Yoli lots of advice in regards to trying to help care for the rest of the group, for the younger group and everything. Of course, they're paired up during the Digimon World Tour, where they deal with the Flymon. Sora, in regards to Cody, will take his opinions into account, of course, when he gives them in regards to like certain issues. She's very encouraging of that. She thinks that he's very good for being very steadfast in his his belief system. Ken and Sora, before when he was a Digimon Emperor, Sora did not like him. Most of them didn't like him when he was the Digimon Emperor anyway. But since he's no longer the Digimon Emperor and he's gotten better, they're much, much better friends and everything. And she helps him in getting over his scars that he has in regards to, his scars with healing from being the Digimon Emperor, which is the problems that he's caused. So we still get a lot of that. She's very caring for, just like list everyone in the Digimon section. She's, for them, she's very, very caring to them. She adores Biyomon. She will do anything to protect Biyomon. We see how hurt she was when Biyomon didn't want anything to do with her before the Digimon had their memories back. So we get a lot of that, unfortunately, when it comes to Sora. She has, lots of highs and lows and everything. And she, she's a DigiDestined of Love, and she very much shows her love for the people around her, and she's also much better, by the end of the series, she's much better at being able to show her love and, communicate her love, and has a much better relationship with her mother. As I said, like her father's like, they go shopping every weekend, and it, it runs up my credit cards a lot type of a thing. Which is just funny. I mean, like, you see her having much better relationships with her mother, and of course she seems to have a good relationship with her father. She's a designer when she's all grown up and everything, and an adult. And that's basically what we get for Sora. That's basically the best overview of her character that I can do at the moment. As I said, I might do something where I do an overview of each and every single one of the Digimon Adventure Tri movies, and then the Digimon 2020, The Last Evolution one. I may do those at one point, but that'll be a little ways into the future. So that's what I have for Sora. I thank you very much for watching. The next one will be Izzy. So yeah, then we'll be moving on to Knowledge. Don't expect me to wear glasses in that video. I don't do glasses. Because Izzy's crest are glasses. So I won't be doing that. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.
You're supposed to be our leader, Tai, but you don't know a thing about us. And you're just as bad, Matt. Always moping around, angry at the world. The only thing you guys are good at is fighting, especially with each other. But I guess that's just how it is. Let Sora take care of everyone. She'll be fine. Don't worry about her. Well, I have feelings too.
Don't forget to tell people you love that you love them. That's what you learned from Sora. Learn that. Bye.